okay, so you know how sometimes in English there are things that seem like they should be really simple,
Right.
but then when you actually start thinking about them, or when you're trying to like learn them as a new language,
Yeah.
they get way more complicated.
Absolutely.
And you're like, wait a minute, I thought this was supposed to be like the easy part.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we're going to deep dive into today.
Okay.
We are talking about the very, very common English greeting, how are you?
Oh, yeah. Everyone's favorite.
And for our sources today, we have this great blog post from Engo.
Engo. Yeah, they always have good stuff.
And then also we're going to be pulling in some stuff from the Master English podcast.
Nice.
And yeah, so I think it'll be really interesting to kind of like see what they both have to say about this, because it is something that, like I said, it seems so simple.
Yeah.
You know, when you first encounter it, you're like, oh, okay, I got this.
You think you have it.
Yeah.
But as anyone who's taught English as a second language can tell you, the students always want to know what's the right answer to that.
Right. And they kind of get thrown when you tell them
Yeah.
that there isn't always like a right answer.
Right.
Or that the right answer is like fine, which they're like, but how am I really fine?
Right. What if I'm not fine?
Yeah, what if I actually want to tell you how I'm doing?
What if I want to give you the whole story?
Yeah.
What if I want to give you the long version?
So yeah, we are going to try to like really unpack this whole how are you thing and see if we can come up with some good strategies to help you sound more natural when you're speaking English.
More native.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the goal, right? We want to move beyond the textbook answer.
Totally.
And really get to like the nuance.
And sound like you belong.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's get into it.
Oh.
So first of all, I think it's really important to think about the fact that how are you is very, very often not actually a literal question.
Right. It's not a genuine inquiry into the state of your health or your well-being.
Right.
It's more of a social lubricant.
Yes, exactly.
The Engu blog had this great example of this American guy who like made a video.
Oh, yeah.
Where he went up to 10 different friends and said, "How are you?"
I remember this.
And most of them just said, "Hi, how are you?"
Right back to him.
Like they didn't even answer the question. They just
bounced it right back.
Bounced it right back at him.
Which I thought was hilarious and a perfect example of how it's more of a ritual than an actual question.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like more elaborate. Hello.
It's like a hello with a little tail on it.
Yeah, a little flourish at the end.
Exactly.
Like waving with your voice.
That's a good way to put it.
So I think that's the first thing to really internalize is like when someone says, how are you?
Yeah.
They're not actually expecting
your whole medical history
to hear all your problems or, you know, even necessarily a detailed account of your day, right? Unless it's like your best friend and you haven't seen them in a long time.
Right, exactly.
And you're about to like launch into a big catch-up session.
Yeah, in those cases it might be different.
Yeah.
But for everyday interactions.
Yeah, just like passing somebody on the street.
Yeah, exactly. Like the barista at your coffee shop.
Yeah, or like, you know, the cashier at the grocery store.
Yeah.
It's not.
It's just a formality.
Yeah, it's a formality.
It's just part of the script.
Right.
So I think that leads us to like the idea of these neutral responses.
Yes.
Which the Engo blog talks a lot about.
Right.
You know, like the classic, I'm fine.
Right, I'm fine.
Fine.
I'm okay.
Yeah.
All those.
Like they're so common.
Yeah.
And I think there's a good reason for that.
Right.
They work on like a couple different levels.
Right.
First of all, they kind of protect the other person.
Yeah.
From having to like get too invested in your emotional state.
Yeah, you're not burdening them.
Yeah, you're not burdening them with a whole bunch of information they may not be prepared to receive.
They didn't sign up for that.
Right, exactly.
When they just asked you a polite question.
And it also protects you.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to overshare with someone you may not know very well.
Yeah, or even someone you do know well. You're just not in the mood.
Right, exactly.
To go into it.
So it's kind of like a win-win.
Yeah.
You know, it keeps things light and breezy.
Yeah, keeps it moving.
And avoids any potential awkwardness.
Yeah, totally.
And the Engu blog actually had this really interesting quote from a linguistic scholar.
Oh, yeah.
Who was talking about how even though, technically, how are you, is like an open-ended question.
Right.
In reality, it functions more like a closed-ended question.
Yeah, it's where you're basically expected to say one of a very limited number of answers.
Right, exactly. You're not supposed to give a long, rambling response.
Yeah, no one's waiting for that.
They're just waiting for you to say good or fine.
Yeah, so they can move on with the conversation.
And get to the real point.
Okay, exactly.
Like whatever they actually wanted to talk to you about.
Right.
And the Engu blog had another interesting tidbit about this from an anthropologist.
Oh, yeah.
Who had observed that even people who were like dealing with serious illnesses would still say, I'm fine when asked, how are you?
Hmm. Yeah, it's so ingrained.
It's like this automatic response.
Yeah, it's just like a social script that we all follow.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm fine is a perfectly good default. You
Yeah.
can never go wrong with that.
Right.
But, if you want to add a little variety to your responses,
Sure.
the Engu blog gives us a whole bunch of other neutral options.
Okay, great.
Like, for example, I'm good or I'm well.
Right.
And it's interesting they actually mentioned that there's still some debate about which one is, like, grammatically correct.
Yeah, there's always these like little debates
Right.
in the grammar world.
But honestly, both are widely used. I'm good. It's probably more common these days.
Yeah.
Especially in casual conversation.
Yeah, I'm good. Feels very casual.
It does.
I'm well. Feels a little more formal.
Yeah, more proper.
Yeah,
But, context is everything.
exactly.
So use your judgment.
Right.
And then you've also got, I'm okay or I'm all right.
Right.
And the Engu blog makes a good point here about how those are similar to what you might say
Yeah.
if someone asks if you're hurt.
Right. Like if you trip and fall
Right.
and they're like, are you okay?
He'd be like,
I'm okay. Yeah, I'm all right.
yeah.
So it kind of conveys that sense of like you're not injured,
Right.
you're not in pain,
Yeah.
but it's not necessarily like super enthusiastic.
Right. It's just neutral. Like,
Yeah.
I'm fine.
Exactly.
Nothing to report here.
And then the Ego blog also points out that you can pair I'm with adverbs.
Oh, yeah.
Like doing well, doing okay, doing all right, doing fine.
Right. All those work.
Yeah.
They all fit in that same category
Exactly.
of neutral response. So that gives you a few more options
Yeah.
to kind of mix things up.
Exactly.
And then there's a whole other set of responses
Okay.
that are kind of like moderately positive.
Okay.
Like you're not just saying I'm fine, but you're not like over the top enthusiastic.
Got it.
So for example, not bad.
Right. Not bad is a good one.
Yeah, that one's very common.
Yeah.
Or a little bit more informal would be not too shabby.
Oh, yeah. Not too shabby. That's fun.
Which kind of implies that things are like reasonably good.
Yeah. Like I can't really complain,
Right.
but they're not amazing.
Exactly.
It's just like, average good.
Yeah.
And actually, speaking of can't complain,
Oh, yeah.
that's another go, can't complain.
Can't complain. Yeah, that's a classic.
Yeah. And it kind of implies that things are at least acceptable.
Yeah, because if they were really bad,
Yeah.
you would be complaining.
You would definitely be complaining.
Right.
And sometimes you'll even hear people say like, can't complain could always be worse.
Right, which is like adding a little bit of
Yeah. A little bit of perspective.
perspective and humor.
Yeah.
Like, oh, yeah, things aren't perfect, but hey, at least I'm not,
Yeah.
living on the street or something.
Right. Exactly.
So that's another good option.
Yeah.
And then we've also got pretty good.
Oh, yeah. Pretty good is good.
Yeah, which I would say is like slightly more positive
Yeah.
than neutral.
And just like fine.
Yeah, exactly.
Pretty good. It's like, I'm actually having a decent day.
Yeah, things are looking up.
Yeah.
And then finally we have same old, which is
Ah.
perfect for when like nothing much has changed.
Yeah. It's like the status quo.
Yeah,
You know?
like nothing exciting to report.
Yeah, exactly. Like, how are you doing?
Right.
Same old.
Same old.
Like just chugging along.
Yeah, it's very relatable.
I feel like I say that a lot.
Me too.
Yeah.
It's just like a comfortable default.
Yeah.
So as you can see, even just within these neutral responses,
Yeah.
you have quite a range of options.
Yeah. There's a lot to choose from.
So you don't have to always just say, I'm fine.
Right.
You can mix it up.
Yeah, exactly.
So what if you do want to go a little bit beyond the standard fine,
Yeah.
but you don't want to like launch into a whole long story?
Right.
The Angu blog has some good suggestions for adding a little bit more detail without getting too carried away.
I like it.
So one strategy is to use the word just.
Oh, yeah, Jess.
Yeah, like, I'm good, just had a big lunch and feeling a little sleepy.
Yeah.
Or, I'm all right, just kind of tired.
Yeah.
Just like a little extra tidbit.
Yeah, you're giving them a little peek
Yeah.
behind the curtain without revealing the whole show.
And the word just kind of like softens it.
Because.
It makes it seem like it's not a big deal. You're not trying to like unload on them. It's just
Right.
like a casual observation.
Yeah, exactly.
Another technique that the Angu blog mentions is adding a negative detail.
Oh.
But with a positive spin.
I like that.
Yeah. So it's kind of like this cultural thing in English where we tend to downplay anything bad.
Yeah, we do. We're very good at that.
When asked, how are you?
Yeah.
So you might say something like, I'm all right. I'm not doing too well, but I'm hanging in there.
Right.
Or, not too bad. I've been down with a cold for a week, but I'm getting better.
Yeah.
So you're acknowledging that things aren't perfect.
Right.
But you're also emphasizing the positive.
Yeah. You're looking on the bright side,
Exactly.
which I think is a very English thing to do.
It is very English.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's always the option of adding some humor
Oh, yeah.
if the situation feels right.
If you know the person well.
Yeah, and you want to be a little bit more playful.
Right.
You know, you can use "How are you?" as an opportunity to lighten the mood. Like the On Me Build blog gives these examples. Oh, same old, still doing the same job and hating every minute of it. Or, can't complain, my laptop died just as I was about to submit a paper and then my bike was stolen, but hey, at least I didn't get run over by a car.
Right, which is very dramatic.
Yeah.
But also funny.
Yeah, you're turning it into a joke.
Yeah, exactly.
So those are just a few ideas
Yeah.
for going beyond the basic, I'm fine.
Right, and adding a little bit of personality to your response.
So now let's switch gears a little bit.
Okay.
And talk about this idea of thinking like a native speaker,
Yeah.
which the Master English podcast really focuses on.
Okay.
So they point out that a lot of English learners
Mm-hmm.
have this tendency to translate directly from their first language,
Right.
which, it can be helpful in something.
To get the basic grammar.
Yeah,
right?
but it can also lead to responses that sound a little bit unnatural.
Yeah, like not quite right.
Yeah, not quite right. Like
Yeah.
a little bit robotic or something.
Yeah, a little too formal.
Yeah. So they give this example.
Yeah.
If someone asks, "How's your day going?"
Hmm.
A direct translation from another language might be something like,
Right.
"My day is good,"
Yeah.
which is grammatically correct,
Right.
but it just doesn't sound very natural.
It sounds like a robot.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
So a native speaker would be more likely to say something like,
Right.
"Pretty good, how about you?" Or, "Not bad, just trying to get through the day." Or, "Great, thanks for asking, what about you?"
Yeah.
So you see the difference.
Yeah, they're much more like fluid.
Yeah.
And they also invite the other person
Yeah.
to respond.
They keep the conversation going, which
Yeah.
is a really important part of sounding natural in English. It's
Yeah.
not just about giving the right answer. It's
Yeah.
about participating in this kind of back and forth exchange.
Yeah, like you're playing tennis with words.
Yes, exactly.
And you have to keep the ball going back and
Well,
forth.
so the Master English podcast gives some good tips
Okay.
for how to achieve this more natural flow. So one is to use contractions
Right.
and informal phrasing.
So instead of saying like, I am going to the store,
Right.
you would say, I'm going to go to this store.
Exactly. I gotta.
Right. All those
Yeah.
like little shortened forms.
They make a big difference
They do
in
make-
sounding more relaxed and conversational.
Yeah, it's like you're not trying so hard to
Right.
be proper,
Exactly.
just like you're just talking.
Yeah.
Another tip is to add a little bit of emotion or personality to your responses.
All right.
So instead of saying, it is cold outside,
Yeah.
you might say, man, it's freezing out there.
Yeah. Much more expressive.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
you're actually feeling the cold.
You're right.
And then they also say to avoid giving like short, robotic, one-word answers.
Yeah.
So instead of just saying yes,
Right.
you might say, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Or totally.
Totally.
Or absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah. All those work.
Or instead of just no,
Right.
you might say, nah, not really.
Nah, not really.
Or nope.
Nope.
Yeah.
So it just adds a little bit more flavor to your response
Yeah.
and makes it sound more engaging.
Exactly.
And the podcast actually applies these ideas to the question, what do you do for work?
Oh, okay.
So instead of saying, I am a teacher,
Which is very formal.
which is very formal,
Yeah.
a more natural response might be something like, oh, I teach English and I love it.
Right.
Or I'm a teacher, mostly English. What about you?
Yeah, so you're giving more information.
Yeah.
And you're also...
And keeping the conversation going.
Right, you're asking a question back,
Exactly.
which is key.
Very important.
Okay, so the Master English podcast also gives us some really good phrases
Okay.
that native speakers use all the time
Mm-hmm.
to make conversations flow more smoothly.
Right.
And these are great because they can really help you sound more confident and comfortable.
Yeah, they make you sound like you belong.
Exactly.
So one of these is, that's a good question.
Oh, yeah, that's a good question.
Which is perfect for when you need a little bit of time to think
Yes?
without just like staring blankly at the person.
Yeah, without that awkward silence.
Right.
Yeah,
It buys you a few seconds
it does.
to gather your thoughts.
Yes.
Another good one is, well, to be honest,
Oh, yeah. Well, to be honest.
which is a really natural way to introduce your opinion
Yeah.
or a slightly more personal thought.
Or a controversial opinion.
Yeah, exactly. It kind of softens the blow.
It does.
You're not just like throwing your opinion out there. You're
Yeah.
kind of like easing into it.
Yeah, exactly.
And then we have, Actually, I was just thinking about that.
Okay.
Which is great for sounding engaged
Yeah.
and like you're really paying attention to the conversation,
Yeah.
even if you weren't.
Even if you were totally zoned out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it makes you sound like you're present
Right.
and interested.
Exactly.
Another really useful one is, you know what, that's interesting because, which is a great way to smoothly introduce a new point or observation.
Or to change the subject.
Yeah, if you need to, subtly redirect the conversation.
Right.
And they give this example
Okay.
with the question, what's your favorite type of music?
Oh.
So a less natural answer might be, I like pop music.
Right.
Which is fine.
Yeah.
But it's just kind of like a flat statement.
Right.
So a more native-like response might be something like,
Yep.
Ooh, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
I'd say pop, but I also love a good rock song. What about you?
Right.
So you see how that's much more engaging.
It is. It's more fun.
It is.
Yeah.
And it also like acknowledges the difficulty of the question.
Right.
And then gives a more nuanced answer.
Right. It's not just like a one-word answer.
Yeah. And then it invites the other person to participate.
Right.
So it's just a much more skillful way of handling that question.
Yeah. It shows that you're like a pro at conversation.
Yeah.
Okay. So finally, the Master English podcast talks about how to handle those tricky or unexpected questions.
Oh, yeah.
Which can be really nerve-wracking.
Yeah, especially for language learners.
Especially
when you're already feeling a little bit self-conscious.
Yeah, and you're like, oh no, I don't know how to answer this.
Right.
In perfect English.
So the podcast suggests using phrases that give you a little bit of breathing room.
Okay.
Like, that's an interesting question.
Yeah, that's an interesting question.
Yeah.
Good one. Or let me think about that for a second.
Let me think about that for a second.
Yeah.
So it just gives you a moment to collect your thoughts.
Yeah, to like stall.
Yeah.
For a second.
Without seeming flustered.
Yeah.
You can also try redirecting the question.
Right.
Right.
If it's something you really don't want to answer.
Yeah, or you just don't know the answer. You
Yeah.
can say something like, I haven't really thought about that, but what I do know is... And then you can steer the conversation towards something you're more comfortable talking about.
Yeah.
And then sometimes the best approach is just to keep it light.
Right.
And use a little bit of humor.
Yeah.
Like you could say, oh, wow, you're putting me on the spot. Haha, let's see.
Yeah.
It kind of acknowledges the unexpected question.
Right.
But in a playful way.
Yeah.
And they give this example with the question, what's the most difficult thing about learning English?
Okay.
So a more native sounding response might be something like, oh, wow, good question. I'd say phrasal verbs. They're everywhere and don't always make sense. How about you?
Right.
Yeah.
So again, you're giving a specific detail.
Yeah.
But you're also...
And you're turning it back on the other person.
Yeah, you're like throwing the ball back over the net.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
it's just a much more skillful way of handling that kind of question than just like freezing up or saying, I don't know.
Right.
Which is tempting, but not very helpful.
Not very helpful in a conversation.
Not really, no.
Okay, so just to recap, some of the key takeaways from the Master English podcast, they really emphasize the importance of thinking in English.
Right.
Rather than just translating from your first language.
Which is hard.
It is hard.
But it's really the key to sounding more natural.
Yeah.
They also talk about using contractions and natural phrasing.
Right.
Keeping your answers lively and engaging.
Yeah.
Using those native like expressions that we talked about to boost your confidence.
Yeah.
And having a few strategies ready for those surprise questions.
Right.
So if you can do all those things, you're going to be well on your way.
To sounding like a native.
Just sounding like a native English speaker.
Totally.
Which is the goal.
Yeah.
So I think those are all really valuable points. And they kind of build on what we learned from the Ingu blog about the social role of how are you?
Right.
So if you put those two things together...
Yeah.
You know, understanding the social context and then having these strategies for sounding more natural, you're going to be unstoppable.
You're going to be an English conversation ninja.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So listeners, your task, if you're up for it, is to try incorporating some of these ideas into your next English conversation.
Yeah. Just see how it feels.
Yeah. See what happens.
See if it changes the flow of the conversation.
Yeah, and maybe even pay attention to what other people say when you ask them, how are you?
Yeah, see if you can spot any of these techniques.
Yeah.
That we've been talking about.
It'll be like a little game.
Yeah.
So now that we've done this deep dive into how are you, here's something to think about.
Okay.
We've been talking about how cultural norms and expectations really shape even these simple greetings.
Totally.
And I think it's really interesting to think about how that applies to other parts of language.
To other interactions.
Yeah, like what other...
Everyday English interactions might have these kinds of hidden layers of meaning
absolutely.
that we don't even realize are there until we start...
Until you really dig in.
Yeah, until we really dig in.
I'd start thinking about them.
Yeah.
So that's your challenge, listeners.
Yeah.
Go forth and explore.
Explore the hidden layers of English.
Exactly.
And let us know what you find.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you.
Awesome.
Okay.
Well, that's it for our dupe dive today.
All right.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll see you next time.
See you later.